What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up.
As I ask Declan or Brian all the time, what stood out?
I know, that's the part I've been afraid of.
Well,
Well,
there-
I grew up in a family where I was tightly controlled, and so I didn't know how to think for myself. So I grew up being extremely dependent on my parents, and I thought I had to be. You all have taught me that I can think for myself. Took a long time, but that part of it is a big deal with me.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well,
Thank you.
for being of service tonight. Well, tonight we will continue to explore how the 12 steps operate to facilitate the achievement of emotional sobriety and self-esteem. We're focusing on step 11. Herb kicked us off last week by a fantastic introduction to step 11 while I was at Legoland in San Diego and having the time of my life with my two little girls. So Roger, let me hand off to you and let's take us on the journey into self-esteem in step 11.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. So let's start with reading step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. As Alan said, we're tying the 12 steps into both emotional sobriety with a particular slant on self-esteem, this time through the 12 steps. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to review, especially for those of you who are new to this gathering. In past meetings of this emotional sobriety workshop, we've talked at length about Nathaniel Branden's 6 pillars of self-esteem and how working the 12 steps can grow our self-esteem, which Branden defines as the integration of self-respect and self-efficacy. By self-respect, he refers to one's belief that they are worthy of or deserving of happiness and love. Self-efficacy refers to one's confidence in their mind, in their ability to learn, to understand, to make good choices and decisions, as well as one's ability to learn specific skills, such as how to communicate effectively, how to earn a living, and many other skills required for day-to-day functioning in our society. So again, those are Branden's 2 main components of self-esteem: the integration of self-efficacy or self-confidence and of self-respect. Self-esteem is just what it says. It's how I esteem myself, how I feel and think about myself. Branden refers to self-esteem as the evaluative component of our self-concept or self-image. I can see myself positively or negatively. Remember that self-esteem is not all or nothing, not black or white. It's not fixed. It can be quite fluid. In some areas of our lives, we might feel consistently good about ourselves and our functioning. In other areas, not good at all. And in any part of our functioning and on any given day, our level of self-esteem can fluctuate a great deal. Branden's 6 pillars, the 6 practices that help raise our level of self-esteem, are living more consciously, accepting ourselves as we are, taking responsibility for ourselves, asserting ourselves appropriately and effectively, living with a greater sense of purpose, and living with integrity or wholeness. Each of these pillars can be gradually strengthened with practice. At the end of his book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, he adds what we're calling a 7th pillar as well: willingness. Willingness to be open to awareness, to deepen our understanding of the 6 pillars, and to put them into action in our lives. We've added to Branden's work the concept that genuine self-esteem is humility-based. It's rooted in a realistic assessment of our strengths and our weaknesses, and an acceptance of both to the best of our ability. Most relevant to step 8 through step 12, we've also added the idea that our relationship functioning is central to our level of self-esteem. Do I consistently make a positive contribution to the well-being, happiness, and self-esteem of those I interact with? Or is my effect on others often negative, even harmful? The answer will strongly impact my own level of self-esteem. Unless, of course, I'm already so focused on myself, which I believe we can all be at times, that I don't even notice my negative impact on others. From my point of view, Herb provided us with an exceptionally deep and insightful introduction to step 11 last week, and described how it can help us each raise our level of consciousness, how meditation and prayer can allow us to strengthen our conscious contact with our higher power, and can allow us to be moved away from our unhealthy, self-centered orientation in life to one that's much more concerned with the well-being of others and still allows for healthy self-care. Tonight, I want to focus on a concept and an experience that I believe is central to our self-esteem, but that Branden gives little explicit attention to in his writings. The concept and experience of becoming more consistently compassionate, kind, and loving in our words and our actions. In thinking about tonight's presentation, I realized that for me, the practice of becoming a more consistently compassionate and caring person is as much a pillar of my self-esteem as any of those that Branden discusses, which is not to say the pillars he describes are not crucial to the development of healthy self-esteem. But for me, unless we speak to how we treat others as well as ourselves, and to the impact of how we treat others, the heart, so to speak, of self-esteem is not being addressed. This means I make an effort to bring full awareness of how I or we are impacting another person I'm interacting with every day, to how much I'm contributing to their happiness, to their well-being, and to their self-esteem, while at the same time taking good, healthy care of myself. Obviously, I often fail to do this, but that is my aspiration. I can think of no practice that is more challenging or more rewarding for me. Please do not take what I have to say here tonight as adding yet more shoulds to your probably very long list of shoulds. Not more shoulds, not more ought tos, not more have tos. Rather, as with all the practice we've talked about that foster self-esteem and emotional sobriety, see if these practices speak to you in a way where they become an I want to rather than an I should. The role of love, compassion, kindness, whichever word speaks more clearly to you, is at the center of steps 10, 11, and 12. In writing about step 10 in the 12 steps and 12 traditions, Bill Wilson wrote, "Finally, we begin to understand that all people, including ourselves, are to some extent emotionally ill, as well as frequently wrong. And then we approach true tolerance and see what real love for our fellows actually means. I would add, we also approach genuine humility. A few sentences later, Bill says, the idea that we can be possessively loving of a few, can ignore the many, and can continue to fear or hate anybody has to be abandoned. But I emphasize this last part, if only a little at a time. We can try to stop making unreasonable demands upon those we love. We can show kindness where we have shown none. Courtesy, kindness, justice, and love are the keynotes by which we come into harmony. I like that, keynotes and harmony, right? With practically anybody. When in doubt, we can always pause, saying, not my will, but thine be done. And we can often ask ourselves, am I doing to others what I would have them do to me today? End quote. Not in general, not some other time or in the past, but today. So we can hear how Bill Wilson is connecting becoming more loving with becoming more connected to our higher power. And of course, step 11 then follows naturally and logically from step 10, providing a pathway through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we each understand Him. The stronger our conscious contact with the God of our understanding, the more able we become to act as instruments of His will. And if I understand God in part as love, then as I improve my conscious contact with God, I'm more able to function from the spirit of love in my life. There is no place for perfectionism here. No expectation of impending sainthood. Bill Wilson pointed out that development of our ability to live with greater compassion towards others happens a little at a time. And even then, only with great willingness and commitment to learning how to open our hearts, to learning how to let the spirit of love, the spirit of our higher power, direct us. For me, my central purpose and focus every day, throughout my day, is to serve the spirit of love as well as I am able. But please realize what that very often means in reality is I need to work with my own reactivity, my own negativity, my own feelings of anger or hurt or fear or depression, the judgments I have of others when they violate my rules, all of that. Trust me when I say I have no shortage of reactivity, negativity, and perfectionistic tendencies to work with. This process involves what Buddhists call the practice of looking deeply into our own intentions, our motives, our wounds, our defenses, and our coping strategies. And this is not all internal work. Sharing these motives, thoughts, and feelings with another person that we trust can be a very important part of helping us find our way to love, finding our way to opening our hearts. What I find is the more accepting, compassionate, and forgiving I am toward all of those feelings and judgments that I find within myself, the more I seek to understand all of those parts of myself rather than simply judge them, the more able I am to keep my heart open. And the less I find myself acting out those feelings and judgments in ways that are harmful to myself and especially to others. In this concept of becoming more loving, I still get to say no when I need to say no, to set limits and boundaries when I need to set them, to express my own wants and needs and take appropriate care of myself. As Branden points out, these are all aspects of healthy self-esteem. But my goal is to do so in a way that shows as much empathy and consideration toward others as possible, to let my genuine concern and affection for other people come forward and my desire to be of service to their needs and to their wants. When I succeed in this effort, in service of my higher power, in service of the spirit of love, my self-esteem is always enhanced, and the self-esteem of the other person or people is often enhanced as well. Yet even though self-esteem is primarily an inside job, we can and do impact the self-esteem of others, both positively and negatively. As Alan often points out, the how of my words and my actions is often more important than the what that I'm saying or doing. Am I behaving and speaking in a way, which is the how, that expresses concern for both you and for me or not? And of course, there are times when I'm really upset that the best I can do is focus on doing minimal harm or to make amends for the harm that I've already done. I'm only human, and of course, I will continue to be imperfect. Still, as quickly as possible when I've erred, I can take ownership of what I've done, and follow my mantra of what would love have me do? Right here, right now. What would love have me do? While I do meditate and contemplate and pray, I must admit that at this point in my life, I'm not nearly as diligent as Herb and probably as many of you are at setting aside a regular time or 2 regular times each day for meditation and prayer. But what I do consistently practice to the best of my ability throughout my day, every day, is asking myself, how well am I serving the spirit of love, the Holy Spirit, if you will? How well am I allowing my higher power to guide my words and actions with each person in each situation that I encounter? The answer is that I'm always serving love and my higher power imperfectly, of course. But I know this, I'm serving love as well as I am able to by making a sincere effort to keep my mind focused on being compassionate and on my heart being as open as I can allow it to be. I'd like to finish by reading the prayer that Bill Wilson provides in his writings about step 11 in the 12 steps and 12 traditions. This prayer is widely known as the prayer of St. Francis and also as the peace prayer. Interestingly, he presents this prayer as a suggestion for learning how to meditate. Quote, meditation is our step out of the darkness into the sun. How then shall we meditate? He asks. First, let's look at a really good prayer, end quote. Remember what Herb said last week. Meditation properly understood is directed thinking. Let's see what direction this prayer is asking your heart and mind, your meditation, to pursue. Lord, make me a channel for thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant me that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. Talk about high aspirations, right? Aspirations are powerful and can provide motivation, inspiration, energy, and willingness to persevere toward our goals. I believe the best aspirations, including the aspiration to become a more loving person, are those that help us understand, accept, and value who we are, and at the same time, inspire us to move toward who we hope to become. So that's what I wanted to share tonight. Thank you so much for your attention. And I want to invite my loved colleagues to step in and join us.
Yeah, Tom and Roger and Alan, you can turn on your video now.
You're gonna have to unmute Tom. Tom,
Do we have to?
you do have to.
Tom,
There he is. You're gonna
hey,
have to unmute Herb too.
Yep.
Yeah. Gentlemen, you're all here and
I
present.
think Herb's good. Yeah, welcome, Tom.
You think
Herb,
Herb's
and
good?
Alan?
You think Herb's good muted? Is that what you meant?
I think he's unmuted, and I welcome his comments.
There's no muting her.
Muted for 7
Yeah.
years in the monastery.
That's right.
Like he said, he's never stopped talking since he left.
Right.
I want to first of all, I want to say I am the least diligent of all of us.
This is
I take pride in silly things.
I
Yes.
know. You're so proud of that, Tom. You are so proud of that. And you're like a magician. You always pull a rabbit out of your hat, even though you're not that diligent.
I do my best. That's right.
You
Oh,
are.
you've seen me, Alan. When do I fuck things up? When I try to prepare, it's like, it's like you've seen it happen. It's like I try to plan ahead, get down until like I just crumble. So this is the best I can do. So, which is what we're talking about, by the way. Well, how about that for a segue? We're talking about step 11. This is about being the best. If it's okay, Herb, if I just jump in here. I'm just gonna. I don't know that I bullet pointed what you said. I bullet pointed what I thought as you went through that, Rogers. Because sometimes I'll actually you're saying things that I just want to write down word for word what you've written. But you've really inspired me to think here. And it's first you got me stuck on the oughta, coulda, shoulda thing. I just kept thinking oughta, coulda, shoulda. It's like I couldn't stop doing that. But here are the bullet points. There's just about 3 or 4 of them here. I wrote this time through step 11 is for me stepping through a threshold to an expanded. This is different than any time I've looked at these steps before. I mean, every time we've gone through this has been different for me. It's step 11 is stepping through a threshold to an expanded perspective of myself as a part of what I call all that is, the bigger, more expanded view, the God, or I have that strange little theory of the exploding God, that God exploded at one point, and we're all little drops of mercury, and as we creep back toward each other, we blob together, and we're all building God back up. We're all little fragments. We're shrapnel from God, and it's like however we're connected that way. The second, because I love, Alan's always pointing out in our podcast that I am a broken record about practice. But the practice, I just reading the step itself, you started by reading it. The practice of this step is prayer and meditation. It's and at the risk of tarnishing my record as being the least diligent, because of this group, I think, and because of my collaboration and work with Alan over these last years since the pandemic, and because of the idea of emotional sobriety, and also my reading of the last couple of years of the Stoic philosophers, I actually am diligent about my morning meditation time, and it's like I've learned this wonderful lesson. Patrick Newman and I figured this out when we were up hanging out at Alan's house in June, last June. It's um, that, and maybe everybody in the world knows this, but I didn't know it. I didn't get it. You don't have to be in the mood to meditate or pray for it to benefit you. It's like you don't have to be, I don't have to be in the mood to brush my teeth in order for it to benefit my teeth and my gums. I do not have to be in the mood to exercise for me to get on my rowing machine and for my body to benefit from that. And so now I know that I can go just begrudgingly in and sit down where I have my little books and my coffee and my journal, and I can sit there every morning, and some mornings are going to be wonderful and I'm going to have a great time and don't even want to tear myself away, and other mornings I'm just grumbling through the whole thing, but I show up, and boy, haven't we all been told that through our experience with 12 steps is what's the most important thing. Show up. So it's a little bunny trail there, but that's the practice of this, the practice of prayer and meditation, and then the constant part, the ongoing part of my awareness of who I am throughout every day. The other bullet point has it, in my current human limited view, that comes down to me getting up every day and being the best version, the most effective, most compassionate version of myself that I can be. And when you said, Alan, Roger, I did write this down. What you said is how well am I serving love and higher power? That's, to me, that's it, because the best version of myself is to be someone who gets up and realizes my job is to be a human being today. And being a good human being, an effective human being, is one to be compassionate, kind, and as effective as possible for myself and for anyone else I encounter, and for the greater good. And then the last bullet point I made, and I think it was just from what you said at the end, was just two things: sincere effort and best effort, good intention, and get myself behind it, and actually do, not just think, not just feel, not just think I'm cool. Try to be cool.
And I would add, Tom, you inspire me to add, I don't have to be in a loving mood to engage in loving behavior.
To be loving,
right?
absolutely.
To be loving.
God.
It's more integrated if I do feel my heart is open and I'm connected, and it's just naturally flowing out from my heart. But you really motivated me to add that. But I don't have to be in a loving mood in order to behave lovingly. So thank you for all of that.
Think about that. I mean, this applies to you, I'm sure, Herb, as well, but I'm talking just from the context of therapy. Those are the three of us are therapists. I mean, what if we didn't go sit down in therapy if we weren't in the mood to see our clients? I mean, it's like, I mean, I think we all have a similar experience that once I sit down and connect and plug in, whatever the mood of therapy is, I'm going to get there. But I don't begin there all the time. I don't say, I don't wake up in the morning and say, I cannot wait to go out there and sit in my therapy room and talk to people all day long. I don't think that, but it's like we show up, we plug in, and that's what we're doing. That's our best self. So
behavior leads and the rest of us follows sometimes.
Thank you.
Right.
Sometimes.
I'll go next, if that's okay.
Hey,
I'm Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you very much, Roger. And thanks, Tom, very much for your diligence in terms of expressing yourself spontaneously. There's real good theology in the science of the Big Bang Theory that I've been reading recently, in terms of, you said God exploded. I mean, that was like 13.5 billion years ago. There's a Big Bang and nothing became something. And it's been continuing to expand. The universe is continuing to expand. So there's a sort of a paradox of the expansion as well as the unity that comes out of that. And just to build a little bit on what you said in terms of meditation, one of my teachers said, there's only two mistakes that you can make. One is not show up, and the other is leave early. There's only two. I mean, it's kind of like, oh my God, that was so perfect. You know,
I can do that. But see, that's I love. Alan and I always talk about the power of lowered expectations. You know, it's like that. I can do that. Bring it down. Bring that expectation down. I can do it. I can show up and not leave early.
And then Roger, your opening comment is that it really captured me. Actually, gave me some traction with really listening to you. And that's, you used the phrase that through prayer and meditation, be moved, that we are moved. And although prayer and meditation are a very active act on our part, at least as I understand it, it is a process of growing in our understanding and in our compassion. And we are moved beyond, I use the term beyond my capacity, 1 + 1 = 5. The outcome is geometrically bigger than the input that I create into it. And I do believe that's the magnifying glass of prayer meditation. And you started off by reminding us that the self-esteem whole theory is based on the number one thing Branden starts out with is consciousness. That's what this is all about. And everything almost comes out of that as I see it. Dr. Berger talks about infinite possibilities. And I was thinking as you were talking, Roger, that this consciousness process, sure, connected to lots of moving parts, but one of the primary moving parts is this effort at improving consciousness, prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it, is the pursuit of, I think Dr. Berger uses the term infinite possibilities. What I wrote down is I grow into the possibilities of my optimal human potential. That I'm in awe of the transformation that I personally have experienced in terms of my awareness and my sensitivity to other people, and the innate and organic desire, not because I need to, where it's step 12, or people talk about this is what you do to happiness, is like, I cannot not want to help people. I cannot not want to help people. And I heard somebody also use a wonderful phrase, all of this put together is really selfishness in the best of senses. In fact, somebody said enlightened self-interest. So staying with the prayer of St. Francis, it's about thinking of what is the prayer confirming. It's confirming the turning from the darkness to the light. It's confirming the turning from the self-centeredness to the other-centeredness. It's confirming that it's a damn slow process. It's really slow. But the promise is the turning, that you will, in fact, go more toward the light and have all this list of wonderful virtues that you illustrated in there. And that's just part of the sort of the inspiration of the prayer itself. And that indeed itself is the meditation. And it builds in not only the vision of it, but the hope that it's real. So thanks.
Wow. Thank you.
Beautiful.
You guys actually sound like you know what you're talking about.
We've spent a lot of time learning how to appear that way.
Mike, well, it's paid off. It's definitely paid off. I only hope to sound as intelligent and wise and clever as you guys right now. Look, one of the things I talk about a lot is that the therapeutic effect of the 12 steps follows the arc of good psychotherapy and the outcome of good psychotherapy. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I think it's important to step back for a minute and look at what's been unfolding in terms of, as we're working the steps, what's happening to us? What experience are we having? How are we changing? As Herb says, he looks at his life and he goes, my God, the transformation has been remarkable. I can see that in my life as well. And and in those people that are close to me. I mean, that I know are in recovery, and I've had the great opportunity to witness that unfolding in their life. Well, look, we all start this journey from being in a crisis. And the crisis really represents our personal limitations. Our personal limitations will always present themselves in the form of some kind of a crisis in our life. Gurdjieff and other people call it the alarm clock goes off. The issue is, do you hit snooze or do you wake up? I mean, that's the big thing. Look, many of us have hit snooze multiple times, multiple times, until the signal is so great, we can no longer ignore the alarm and we wake up. That's the process of all psychotherapy, is helping people wake up to one degree or another. Now, our waking up is not enough, right? It begins a journey. It's not the end of a journey. It's really the beginning of our journey. And as we wake up, we start to develop, all of these insights into ourselves. We start to develop a practice of self-examination. We start to get more and more honest with ourselves. We start to pay attention to our relationship with others. We take a look at ourselves probably for the first time in our life with a real sincere curiosity about what is going on here. What am I doing to create this existence that I have at this point in time? Well, we know that it cannot stop there. The way that we are wired is that we are wired to continue to move towards wholeness. Like Richard Rohr calls it, our holiness, right? We move towards our holiness. That's an ongoing process. And if we stop it, we're going to not just stay where we're at, we are going to regress. I love the image that Jacqueline Small had of recovery. You're walking up an escalator that's going down. When you stop making progress, you do not stay where you are at. The escalator takes you down, you regress. And, we've seen this in many times, people with multiple years in the program, 9 years, 10 years, 20 years, stop doing the work. And what happens? They're in full-blown relapse. So this moving forward, this continuing our growth and our development, is not a luxury. It's an important part of what our experience is. And Bill had the insight that we must continue growing. We must continue to grow ourselves along these lines. And that's what I think step 11 is about. It's continuing to expand our consciousness. That's what good psychotherapy does. It's an expansion of consciousness. You start seeing the world through a much better lens, right? A lens that opens up your consciousness, where you see a vision before you that's much greater than you could ever see before. This is a very important step. And it's a step that continues our growth and our development along these lines. And, Herb has in his book, really, really, really espouses the virtue of this and the importance of this in our recovery. And Bill makes it very, very clear that when meditation and prayer are taken together, it's an incredibly powerful experience. One or the other is powerful in themselves, but there's a synergy that happens that goes on here. So I'm very excited about this. And Tom, next week you'll lead, and then I'll do the cleanup position 2 weeks from now.
I just made my notes, so I know what to do next week. I copied down something from each of you. Said, oh, good, I can do that.
The very nature of reality, especially human reality, is this internal yearning for, and almost an imperative for, this growth. Yes. And that's what Pascal said in his own way, is the whole in us is in the shape of God. And Jung said it in terms of the spirit is the antidote to spirits, meaning alcohol doesn't serve our needs, but the spirit does, in fact.
Mm.
Right. It's very well said. And I do think of it as a psychological, spiritual, and biological imperative to continue to move towards wholeness.
Yeah.
We start out being undifferentiated, and our whole life is in movement towards being more and more differentiated, which means wholeness. We think of differentiation as separating, but it's not. It's really moving towards a unity of self, an integration.
You said good psychology, and I wrote down it's authentic spirituality at the same time in the 12 steps, because we're all talking about the same thing, for using different vocabulary to describe different phenomena or different perspectives, but we're talking about the human organism.
Right on. Well done, gentlemen. Very good.
No, I just want to say real quickly, Alan, because this is proof that I didn't write this book so many years ago, back in 1989. Exactly what you said. It says in the first page of my book says, "Before we are one, we are many."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I've learned, what it meant by listening to you guys, and by especially with what you've had to say about differentiation. It's you know, and it isn't, ever since we've come into recovery, isn't every fucking thing a paradox?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It just is. And that's the fun part.
That's right, man. Well, wonderful job tonight, gentlemen. Bravo, bravo, bravo.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved, the forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.